With dietitians, I need to point out that the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist. Just like, mentioning with the nursing and if they're an LVN or a dietitian, we have 4 years of undergrad training in a accredited program, and so very heavy on the sciences, so biology, chemistry, physiology, all of it. From there, we go into master's, and we do a 9 to 18 month internship, which is very clinical heavy. From there, we get to sit for an RD exam, and so the big difference is we have medical nutrition therapy. So we can treat with food chronic illnesses. Versus a nutritionist can just do an online course for 2 hours and say, I'm a nutritionist. So that's a huge difference. So we have that background there. So you always want to make sure that you're working with a registered dietitian. Now, in dietetics, clinical, 70% of dietitians work in clinical setting, which is where you'll see more depression in inpatient, outpatient. But I work in community. So in community, prevention is always the goal. So I'm teaching kids how to eat healthy so they don't fall into any kind of chronic illness later. With adults, teaching them how to prevent diabetes or high blood pressure. So prevention is always the goal. In clinical, it's treatment. Okay, with a little bit preventative. Maybe if they have diabetes, we're trying to prevent them for going on dialysis or having complications, but you're still having to treat. So provider role, so what I see is disease self-management and self-efficacy in treating depression. I teach at our food bank an 8-week diabetes series, and so I see type 2 diabetes is the population I work with. And so with that, just with diabetes itself, people diagnosed are twice as likely to have depression when they do have diabetes. And so that's really where I see it the most. On the other side of that, because I work at a food bank, no food support, meaning that it's food insecurity, not knowing where their next meal is coming from, stressors related to that. And so really, that's probably going to be a lot of my focus for this presentation is the food support, and if they have it or not. Specific age groups, so with children, I've seen depression in a lot of times parents maybe not giving independence to their kids with the disease. So I've seen that in like type 1 diabetes where, the mom is very up on their numbers and if they're, taking their insulin and everything, and the kid's just like, whatever, mom. I'm just here for the appointment because you dragged me here. And so, they don't give them enough buy-in. Same thing with like food allergies. I see that quite a bit where, the parents are, just so stressed out with what the kid can or cannot eat, and so the child doesn't really take ownership of it. And then later on that can manifest into depression and other issues. For young adults, I'll see depression and a lot of eating disorders kind of manifest in that sense, or maybe excessive drinking, especially with like college age. And then older adults, loneliness with depression. And so like a lot of widows in the food sense, when they're living by themselves, they don't want to just cook for themselves. And so a lot of them don't eat, and that's kind of where the food piece comes in. And I know I'm not going to be hitting everything, so if you've seen something already in your internship, you can always chime in and bring it up, because again, my experience is really more with the community side. So considerations when interacting with the clients. So this is something that obviously you can witness. These are things that we look for, but just their overall health status, right? Overweight or obese. I want to see really just learn about their quality of sleep, because it's very interrelated with their energy levels. If they have a sedentary lifestyle, that's going to tie into health status, obesity, overweight, and kind of bringing these to mind, it made me think of the Super Size Me documentary in 2004, where he was just on a diet of McDonald's for 30 days, and within 2 weeks, he was already experiencing signs of depression. just from, diet's just so related. And so just the, sedentary lifestyle, you have no energy, so you don't want to do anything. You're not getting good quality sleep from it. Obviously, a lot of weight increase there. Disease state. So, if they have, if they have diabetes, if they're already on dialysis, we see a lot more depression in that area. Food security. So making sure that, if they can, if they have access to food, access to healthy food, because a lot of times, depending on their economic status, they're going to buy what's cheap, which is high fat, high sodium, high sugar foods, and we know those just wreak havoc on the body and on the mind. I look for food patterns. So if there's no vegetables there, if there's no fruit there, if there's a lot of processed foods, for me that's kind of a red flag that there might be food insecurity. And I do this through like a 24-hour food recall. Sometimes I can have them give me even like 3 days worth. And then just overall, just poor appetite, skipping meals, or dominant desire for sweet food. So kind of that craving for, for dopamine, right, is what we get from a lot of our sweet foods there. For, this is kind of on the side, but, eating disorders as well. So some considerations with eating disorders, obviously you have like your anorexia, bulimia. So like with anorexia, it's that fear of food. So they're kind of obsessively maybe talking about food, or they'll completely like avoid the topic. If they're talking with you, they'll refuse to eat just certain food groups. So they may just eat, fruits and vegetables, that's it, because carbs are going to make me fat, or fat's going to make me fat. So they just completely eliminate those food groups. You may see them in constant motion or fidgeting, because to them it's like I'm burning calories if I'm constantly moving. So I've seen that. Also with bulimia, so on the flip side of it, that's going to be more, frequent trips to the bathroom maybe. Physical manifestations, sometimes you'll even see like swollen glands, discoloration of teeth, the stained teeth. So just some considerations there that I've come across. And then, so as a dietitian, these are just deficiencies in key nutrients. And so, so all these have research to back it up. Omega-3 is probably the one that has been most researched. And so I do have a recommendation for omega-3. But omega-3, those are our essential fatty acids, and so our body cannot make it. Okay, we need to get it from a food source. So omega-3s, from our salmon, our fatty fishes, walnuts. I'm so glad that flaxseed and chia seeds are like in right now. Those are a great source of omega-3 there. But obviously, supplementation is an option. Amino acids, and specifically tryptophan, which is converted into serotonin. Carbohydrates with whole grains. So again, that whole grain, having that fiber there, we don't get those big spikes in blood sugar and then we crash later. We're wanting to keep our energy, keep that consistent. Just overall, all our proteins, making sure we have complete proteins. B complex vitamins, so your B1, 2, 3, 6, and B12. So those are your energy producing vitamins. Folate, so folate is all our green veggies. So green leafy vegetables, connected with brain health. Chromium, so this is things like oats, barley, sweet potatoes, broccoli, green beans. Selenium, sources like nuts, fish, meat, and then zinc, red meats, fish. Okay. So we don't need very much. It's very, just taking a multivitamin would take care of like over half this list. So at the very minimum, just recommending for on our side, or encouraging just a daily vitamin. So goals and related interventions. So goals for us, for the dietitian, making sure that the patient has a knowledge of their disease. The classes that I teach for our diabetes self-management classes, a lot of them come with such fear. And the first thing that we really talk about is it's not diabetes that causes complications, it's uncontrolled blood sugar. So even with a disease, you can be just as healthy as someone without it. It's just making sure that you have that knowledge, you have that power, you can manage it, you can control it. So we really just push the self-efficacy, the confidence that they can manage their disease state. And so the intervention would just be making sure that they have the education, they have the opportunity for it, so that they can get a grasp and it doesn't seem as overwhelming. Especially a lot of patients I have where they've had a brother or an aunt that's lost a leg or lost their eyesight, and they just think like that's my fate. That's what I'm gonna that's what's gonna happen, and it doesn't have to happen. We completely eliminate that myth. And so making sure that they just have knowledge of their disease. And I push a lot on diabetes because it's so prevalent in our area. It's something I constantly see. So as it relates to food, my goals, so I kind of lined it up, it's all related to food. So food security is so huge. And so making sure that they do have food support. So you can always refer to a food bank. And the way that works is you just give them our main contact. They call the food bank. When they call, we ask, what zip code are you in? And then we refer to a pantry in their neighborhood, in their area. So the food bank is kind of just the middleman of receiving all the donations, and then it's the churches, it's the pantries that feed it out into their communities. And so we serve 11 counties. We have a huge radius of service. Every county in Texas is covered by a food bank. So every county is able to give food support to those that need it. So that's just part of the Texas Food Bank Network. Gardening as well, so growing their own food. Of course, that can be healing, being in nature. SNAP, so that's the food stamps, so supplemental nutrition assistance. They can get help that way. For our older patients, Meals on Wheels or congregate meal sites, so that if they don't want to cook just for one, they can at least go and be social and kind of keep that interaction up. Because once they stop that social piece, then a lot of times their mental health really declines. So making sure that food support's there. The goal is their intake. So making sure that I want to see increased fruits and vegetables, no matter how small the improvement. And so even if they've just added broccoli, to their diet, that's a win. But more whole grains, more quality meat. So nothing that's of course fried or greasy, but some good quality protein there. Dairy, and then eggs are just an awesome nutrition source. Eggs are great. So, and it's easy. It's easy for that's an easy push, right? They're cheap, and so for my food insecure population, they get it. And so you can hit a lot of your nutrients through eggs, but of course the vegetables and fruits. And the quality, like we were talking about, and then just the variety as well. So. And a lot of us too, we kind of eat the same thing every single day, but as you saw, the key deficiencies in nutrients, we need to switch those up and make sure that, it's not just, a banana in the morning is all I'm eating for breakfast, that we're incorporating, of course, darker the color, more nutrition that you get from it. And then, so supplementing omega-3, this has the most backing for research. So just 1 to 3 grams a day, and that could be in conjunction with depression medications, and they see a huge improvement just in their mental health. And so omega-3s are awesome as well. So measuring outcomes and success. So this is something that I really think you're going to see more and more in your practice. And what's really cool is that our food bank was the first to pioneer this. It was in conjunction with Feeding America, but we were given money for a 3-year study where we would offer just healthy food to those that have diabetes in the pantry setting. So we would screen their blood sugar, their A1C. They would see, healthy food, the fruits, the vegetables, whole grains, proteins. And after their about 6 months assessment, we would take their A1C, their blood sugar, and We did this for 3 years. We had over 630 patients that we saw over those 3 years. And so along with offering the food and doing the screenings, we assess their health status, their depression status. And so out of that, we used these 2 questions as a food insecurity screener. So these were actually the first 2 questions we would ask to see if they were food insecure, to then help them with the food support. And it's validated. This has already been adopted into the American Academy of Pediatricians guidelines. You know, Feeding America really just took and ran with this. And so even our food bank, we have Humana health insurance, and we have to do health assessments. These 2 questions were asked on the health assessment for Humana, which is nationwide, right? So you are going to come across these 2 screener questions for food insecurity. So we asked them within the past 12 months, we worried whether our food would run out before we got money to buy more. Was that often, sometimes, or never true? And then the second one is within the last 12 months, the food we bought just didn't last and we didn't have money to get more. Was that often, sometimes, or never true? And so just from their answers and working in the setting, it was, you know, often true that both those scenarios. So obviously they were enrolled with the program, but you know that's a huge red flag too, that they do need need help with food, unfortunately. So measuring outcomes, making sure that food support's given, that the referrals are made if they're needed to. You know, other outcomes or successes, that they just have more confidence in managing their disease. You know, I really want them to leave knowing that they're not helpless. You know, that they can take control of that. That they're eating healthier, like we talked about, however small the improvement, so incorporating even just one vegetable in there. And then they just feel better, right? So that's the whole goal. that's a huge measure of success, that they just feel better. All right. So communication with counselors. So this is where we need you, okay? We need you to refer to us if you do, you know, pick up on any kind of nutritional deficiency there, you know, and of course we need to refer to you. So if there's anything that's even, you know, beyond our practice scope, we want to make sure that we're getting them to the right people, getting them the right help. And so it is, you know, it's a great partnership, great relationship. So we do need you. A huge communication, really, you know, the source of depression is very helpful to know, if, of course, the patient allows you to share with other providers. But, you know, because if it's disease related, you know, that's where that education piece, if it's, you know, lack of food at the house, you know, that's another area. And again, it can be very shameful, it can be very embarrassing when, you know, they don't have food in the fridge, in the cupboard, and so they're not, you know, they may not tell me, but they may tell you, or vice versa. So just really finding out what the source is of that, so, you know, if it can be addressed, you know, from my end. So reporting on diet quality, you know, if they do share that with you, that's kind of, you know, my big guideline there. So if anything sticks out with any type of food habits, you can always flag that. And then their food security status, socio-economic status as well. So that's where, you know, just on your own, you could just refer to food bank, refer to, we have someone on staff that can sign people up for SNAP. And so most food banks do across the nation. And then just the last piece there, if, you know, you do refer to us, and if we're working, you know, the multidisciplinary, you can ask if they enjoyed working with the dietitian, okay? Because they're not all as awesome as I am. There's some really, you know, not so great dietitians out there, and so we don't want to put our patients in an awkward situation where it's like, no, you need to see this dietitian, like you have food issues, and they just, you know, they may just shut down because they're like, no, they're terrible, I don't want to share anything with them. So you can ask to make sure that that relationship and that partnership is working for them, and if not, you know, it's okay to refer. either find another one or, yeah. We don't want to put more stress on them there. But, okay, is there...